best place to look for a new mine is where an old mine already exists. Hi, George Sanders, President, Goldcliff Resource Corporation. Today, September 3rd, 2025, we are at Panorama Ridge, and just over my left shoulder you can see the remnants of the nickel plate open pit mined by Mascot Gold Mines from the late 1980s until 1997. That mine produced 1 million ounces of gold on top of the historic nickel plate mineralization that was mined from 1903 to 1955, which produced an additional 1.5 million. So we are exploring in an area where 2.5 million ounces have already been mined. There's obviously no head frame in an open pit mine, but you can see we're very close, 4 kilometers from that mined out void to where I stand. The purpose of today is just to give you, shareholder and prospective investor, a look at the lay of the land and tell you a little bit about what we are doing this fall. There's plenty of information on the background of both nickel plate and our activities at Panorama Ridge on our website, in our recent news release, and in our video of August 21st and of July 5th. So I do encourage you to check those out. We're not here for the first time. This property was extensively explored by Goldcliff, as you can read. But to quickly point out, a lot of drilling was done here, over 16,000 meters in over 190 holes. Originally, off camera to my right and a little bit downslope was the Viking showing, and in the opposite direction to my left and downslope was something called the York showing. It turns out that subsequent trenching and drilling indicated that this was one zone wrapping around the apex of the ridge on which I am standing. That drilling indicated that we had mineralization, alteration, geology, and in places grade similar to the ore that was taken out of the nickel plate Mascot Gold Mine. So this is really a great place to be looking. All of that work was done in a sub $1,000 an ounce gold price environment. This morning, the price of gold is over 4,800 Canadian dollars. So I'm just going to kick this ground here, because this dirt on which I stand is less than a meter before the bedrock, and I'm not sure exactly where the camera's set up here on which drill section, but I can tell you that less than a meter below where I'm standing is daylighting or almost daylighting open pit style mineralization of grade in excess of 0.2 grams. Many places along the apex of the ridge here, some of the initial drilling had sections in excess of 1 gram gold per ton. At these Canadian dollar gold prices, just for perspective, a half a gram of gold today is valued at over $78 per ton in situ. So the kind of grades drilled so far lead us to believe that this project deserves a second look. So from here, we're going to look at one of the other zones. We're going to look at a more typical nickel plate high-grade style, and then we're going to tell you, finishing off, a little bit about the work that we're doing as we're here this week. Here we are at the Nordic zone. This is the first zone of really interesting mineralization that we found outcropping in the early days of our Panorama Ridge exploration. There is an old prospect pit just behind the camera in front of me, a little bit downslope, and that brought the original founder of Goldcliff, Len Salican, and Grant Crooker, who were up here in 2000 investigating new mineralization in a clear cut. So what we can tell you about Nordic is that this zone is a little bit smaller, but a little bit higher grade than the main York Viking zone that we just had a look at. The mineralization, like at York Viking, is very continuous. There's great continuity in length, width, and a little bit in depth. But as I say, this is a little bit of a smaller zone. What happens here at Nordic is also something that happens throughout the nickel plate district, and that is there is significant diking, which is part of the mineralized system, but not all of it affecting mineralization, and so the zones can get cut off by both diking and by structures. And so just up behind me, the zone continues, and then it's cut off by a big dike, and we haven't found any extension of it since that cutoff. I want to show you what a typical Nordic zone and typical Panorama Ridge mineralization looks like. I'm holding this with two hands, partly because it's very heavy. This rock is very dense. At the nickel plate open pit, the specific gravity was at least 4, so you need a little bit less of length, width, and depth to make tonnage because of the high specific gravity. Mineralization is primarily pyrite and pyrrhotite. We will talk a little bit later about the headleyite and the bismuth tellurides, but as you can see, that's what the material looks like. So against the background of the other rock types here, it's pretty distinctive and pretty easy to find. And the other thing that we will draw your attention to is, while this outcrops, a lot of the mineralization at Panorama Ridge does not. However, you can also see that the overburden cover is 1 meter or less, and that's pretty well consistent throughout the length and part of the width of Panorama Ridge. So the Nordic zone, not a standalone deposit or accumulation of mineralization, but certainly in an exploitation environment, this is mineralization that would be extracted and sent for processing. So here we are at the Bonanza Trench. We were just filming earlier in the video up top on the York Viking zone, and so that's just upslope to my left, and I was talking at that part of the video about the mineralization continuing down both slopes, and here you get a strong impression of that. More importantly, here we sampled extreme high grade, multi-ounce over about a 2 meter square panel just in here. Initially, this trench was reclaimed because the rock didn't have any spectacular visible gold in it that would lead us to believe it would assay so high. When those assays came back and the check assays came back, we did some electron microprobe analysis and learned that the very high grades of gold were some free gold, but also associated with a bismuth telluride called headleyite. Headleyite is important in the Headley district. Bismuth and tellurium and gold together are important in the Headley district, and in fact, headleyite was strongly consistent with the highest grade stopes that were mined in the original nickel plate underground mine, with mine grades in excess of 1 ounce gold per ton. So it's very much a driver here. Our thinking is, if we can find a number of near surface zones or pods of higher grade headleyite style mineralization, that will indeed augment the bulk tonnage near surface mineralization that's been drilled to date. And it's that search the very first stages, some preliminary ground geophysics and some some soil geochemistry, that we begin the search, and we'll go to the area here that we're working on. We'll go there next, that we're working on in September of 2025. So now, to conclude the video, we want to talk about what we're doing currently in early September of 2025. Here I am at what's known as the tower zone. The actual zone is just out of your view to my right, downslope. Further downslope along the bottom of that clear cut is a number of our LDS, lithic drainage sediment geochemistry methodology sampling anomalies. We also have, if you can see at the notch in those trees in the distance, we have a sample of very intriguing grade. You know, the interesting thing about this property, whether we're just reevaluating old data or whether we're in the field like right now, every time we're on the property, we see something new and something that is highly encouraging geologically and potentially economically. I would say to any geoscientist out there, that is the hallmark of a really, really good property with really excellent potential. We do have that here. At the tower zone, initially it was like the rest of the zones on Panorama Ridge. It was just a discrete outcrop, and subsequent logging and subsequent work by us opened up the thing eventually in some areas to extensive trenching and drilling. So even discrete limited outcrops here are of importance. Float samples are of importance. The particular thing that has encouraged us right now is the high bismuth and tellurium responses in some of those LDS samples. We've spoken about those in our most recent news release, August 21st, and in the video accompanying that news release. So draw your attention to those. We're also here, and that work has already been completed, to collect representative drill core samples for submission for initial preliminary metallurgical profiling to see whether or not Panorama Ridge mineralization is amenable to non-cyanide processing technologies. So those samples have been collected and will be sent to the Dundee Sustainable Technology facility in Quebec in the not too distant future. I expect results back not sooner than a couple months, but that's something that's of high interest to us as well. So to conclude, we hope you have an idea of the lay of the land. We've shown you what some of the mineralization looks like. We hope that you have an indication of the rugged nature of this part of British Columbia. Some of it's a little steep, it's heavily forested, there's not a lot of outcrop. So that methodical work of geochemistry, of prospecting, of ground geophysics, and paying attention to discrete anomalies, that really does yield results. It has for us in the past. We're optimistic that it will do so again in the future. So we hope you've enjoyed this glimpse into our activity at Panorama Ridge. We're really excited about it. As we said, every time we're in the field, we see something new and intriguing and encouraging. By the time you're viewing this video, the crew will have wrapped up the job here and be on the ground at Ainsworth. So the next video that comes to you will be once we've given them a chance to settle into that work program. I will journey there to shoot a video from Ainsworth, high-grade silver in the Kootenays. Thanks for paying attention to our work at Panorama Ridge. We'll see you later from Ainsworth.